Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to The Heartbeat, the place where I talk about just a few of the things that make this little guy tick. Today, I'm going to be talking about episode 5 of season 2 of HBO's The Leftovers. Join me, won't you? Alright guys, we are now halfway through this second season of The Leftovers, a fact that I find both exciting and also just a little bit depressing. It's exciting though because, like I mentioned on my review for the first season of The Leftovers, when a show has the courage and the bravery to be this concise and to be only 10 episodes in length, there is so often felt just that great forward momentum. Like there's a specific destination that they're aiming for, and there's no time for an episode or two to be kind of just a filler episode where they're treading water, waiting for the real plot to kick back in, and that's great. And of course it's depressing because I love this show, and I love these characters, and I love spending time with them. And speaking of characters that I love, I was so excited to hear that this would be a Matt-centric episode. I love the character of Matt Jameson. And I really have to commend Prada, who's an ex-Catholic, and Lindelof, who used to be an atheist and now is kind of just a vague spiritualist, for instilling that love in me by creating a character that is so rounded. He's not just whitewashed, and he's not just your standard kind of straw man religious figure. And at the same time, he isn't completely free of any sort of harmful dogmatic beliefs, or free of being fearful, or being angry, or being violent. That doesn't mean that I don't feel like there's been a few missed opportunities with this specific character and who he is. So in this world where everyone's questioning what happened to this 2% of the world's population and why, I feel like it would have been very natural were the one Christian character to present the very Christian doctrine of salvation by grace alone. After all, we've had characters explain that it was geography that led to certain individuals' departure, while others believe that it was their good deeds, and still, we've yet to have someone posit the idea that it was unearned grace and mercy that led to their departure. Nonetheless, I have really enjoyed the character of Matt Jameson and have definitely felt that he's been dealt with and handled with the same level of truth and authenticity as the rest of the characters on The Leftovers. And because of that, I really wanted him to have another great episode, like episode 3 from season 1. And I really didn't have anything to worry about. This episode was amazing and was definitely another excellent chapter in the Leftovers saga. One which continues to explore what it promised it would by presenting that very iconic opening sequence from this season. That being the universal desire to find hope by affixing meaning to certain events and happenings. Like Lindelof himself said about that opening sequence, what if in that opening sequence there wasn't a word of dialogue, and the audience basically just has to affix meaning to it, forcing them to ask, why did they put this here? What does it mean? It all started to connect into the story that we wanted to tell, because I think it's really interesting when people attach meaning to something. Another really interesting thing about the season 2 opener is how Lindelof compares it to the opening scene of the Coen brother film, A Serious Man, a film which finds a lot of thematic similarities to the biblical book of Job, presenting a character that finds himself in a crushing cycle of what could be a divinely ordained hardship. And those same ideas really do connect to our main character from this episode of The Leftovers, where we find a man who has a fixed meaning to his surroundings, and has a fixed meaning to the things that have happened to him and his wife. And that really is the reason why we find Matt Jameson in the place that we do at the beginning of this episode, stuck in that routine, stuck in that cycle, repeating things over and over and over again, because he believes there's something about this place, or something about the actions that he did while in this place that brought his wife Mary out of her coma for that one evening, and he so desperately wants to get back there. And I love what that opening scene communicates about Matt, and what he holds on to, and what he's striving towards. And I think Christopher Eccleston summed it up really well in an interview when he said, "That's the engine for me when I play Matt. In any situation, Matt is always looking for hope." And all throughout the opening montage, you really feel that drive, that tireless devotion to his wife Mary, and his vigilance over her condition, going so far as to record her sleeping each night and watch that back every single morning. I will say though, as I was watching the opening montage and they started to chronicle a second day in Matt and Mary's life, I had the very silly thought of, why am I seeing this? I've already seen what these people do day to day, and I've got an understanding of that routine. And then about halfway through that second day though, it came to me, well, obviously, this is exactly what Kassell, the film's director, and Lindelof are trying to do, which is to take me into Matt's experience. And so by the end of that second day, I was actually saying out loud, please go again. Be brave, make the bold choice, show me another day. Because the more times that I experienced that repetition, the more I would understand Matt Jameson and experience his pain and his frustration and his exhaustion, which perfectly teed me up for the really chilling moment when Matt grabs Mary's face and says, "Look at me!" and then looks up and really beholds with horror his own depravity and brokenness. And I really feel like that moment specifically conveys one of Matt's underlying fears, which is, would I love and care for my wife the way that I am if I knew she was never coming back? Or is that care really contingent upon me expecting a certain outcome or a certain reward? Which is really heartbreaking, but also understandable, and I felt is really communicated well in shots like the one where Matt is in the background in the midst of a scuffle, and Mary's in the foreground, completely unaware, and is completely unable to thank him for his sacrificial efforts. But this is a man that needs to keep on scuffling baffling, that needs to keep on fighting because he really looks to himself and his own ability to hold it together and to be self-sacrificial as proof that what he believes is true. And he really needs it to be watertight in scenes like the one where he finds out that his wife is pregnant, and that doctor is in the room really questioning him. And speaking of that belief, I really gotta say, though I was on board with Matt and actually kind of believing where he was at and believing that Mary had come back that one night when he got hit on the head and then came to and saw Mary talking to him and saw her saying things like, "You have to get us back to town, that's the only place that I'm safe," and then seeing his response to that, one where he absolutely believed that she was actually talking to him and displayed that by passionately kissing her, it really made me think, oh gosh, has this guy been imagining that Mary woke up this whole time? And that really is the brilliance of this show and the brilliance of the writing. And speaking of such things, I loved how things developed once Matt and Mary got back to town, and all the twists and turns that I was taken on. Twists and turns that I really did not see coming. So for example, the moment that the park ranger actually heard reason and let Matt and Mary back into the park to get wristbands. Or when John showed up to kindly help Matt and had that great one-liner of, "What? Are you afraid he's going to baptize you?" But then had that great twist where we see, John is still John. He's still just as afraid of supernatural things as he was before. And then a moment later, there's that very surprising beat where Matt consents and says, "All right, she never woke up." Only to have it turn one more time and have Matt come out and ask John specifically, "You were angry at this place. What happened to you?" And this episode certainly carried on this show's trend of sprinkling great little bit parts throughout. So whether it's Virgil, the old man who offered to help Kevin with his situation, or the guy who seems to supernaturally be aware of Mary's pregnancy, or Ulmer, the Swedish guy with a samurai haircut. In this episode, though, no one quite beat the uniqueness and strangeness of the mother and son, who yet again were demonstrating people's need to ascribe meaning to certain actions. Even if that action was getting a proper man of God to hit you as hard as he can with an oar while shouting, "John." Random side note, I really felt like the son in that situation looked a lot like Hugo Reyes or Hurley from Lost. And oh my gosh, how about that long shot where Matt and Mary walk up the drain pipe and all we see is Matt's flashlight up there dancing in the darkness as he shouts this and that. And then suddenly they're just dumped out of that drain pipe, really representing well, I think, how Matt feels in relation to God, that being he's just been dumped by him. And of course I have to mention the final masterstroke of the episode, which was when our main characters encounter the car accident. And it's not just any car accident, it's the father and the son who stole Matt and Mary's wristbands earlier in the episode. Another instance where the main characters and we the audience are asked the question, was that just coincidence or was there a providential hand involved? And the final positive thing that I really want to highlight this week is just how expertly Lindelof and Perrotta have now drawn out the battle lines in The Leftovers. The first half of this season was really spent establishing these individuals on either side of that line and demonstrating how strongly they believe what they do. Showing that they're willing to do things as extreme as burn down houses or be stripped naked and put into stocks. And now that Lindelof and Perrotta have allowed us to see those points of view empathetically, he now places them in opposition to one another, which really allows us to invest in the plot going forwards, and really puts a lot of extra tension into what will happen next. And this is something that Lindelof has tried to do before on shows like Lost, but actually, in my opinion, hasn't succeeded as well as he is here. So for instance, on season 6 of Lost, the battle lines aren't really drawn until literally the last episode. I specifically remember that moment when Jack crests the hill and he and Locke literally face off with one another. But in my opinion, that happened far too late. Here though, only halfway through the season, we now have this very specific target to aim at and this very specific conflict to play with. Now, I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit this week, and instead of talking about one specific negative thing, I'm just going to talk about something that would have been negative on any other television show, that just being the idea of cause and effect, and how little effect some of our main characters' actions had in this episode, and how often it was something outside of them that moved the plot forwards. Again, on any other television show, I would call this lazy writing. I would call it bad drama. But here, though, in a world where you're supposed to constantly be questioning, was that coincidence or was that providence, it fits perfectly. Now, looking forward to next week and things that I'm excited about continuing to explore, I really just want to know, will Mary ever wake up? Is Matt correct in assuming that that can and will happen? Also, is there something more I should read into her oftentimes upward-directed gaze? I definitely want to know how long Matt will remain in stocks, and what will happen when he and John finally face off again, and how will Mary being in the Garvey's house affect their lives? So to close out this review, as a way to thank you and to just kind of encourage further engagement, I wanted to read a quote from Kevin Carroll where he said, "By creating this show, we really are challenging people in a way to participate in the collective conversation of humanity." Yes, I understand. Me saying that could definitely come off as hoity-toity, artsy-fartsy, and just sounding very lofty, but I do genuinely believe in the worth of what we're doing right here, guys, and the worth of discussing a television show like The Leftovers. So, thank you. so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for commenting below. It really means a lot. And please do comment below for this episode as well. Let me know what you thought. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What were some of the standout moments for you? What are you looking forward to next week? Also, please do subscribe. As usual, I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you all to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.